Okay, I've had a few people ask me how um, I made these 3D models. So I'll just quickly kind of explain how I did it, walk through it. Um, I'm going to be using Blender to do the 3D modeling, and then I'll show you how to load the models into a browser with 3JS. You don't have to use Blender, that's just what I'm most familiar with. In theory, any 3D modeling program should do just fine. Um, okay, so I'll first open up Blender. Um, I'll explain a little bit on the basics of Blender. There are probably videos that do that much better than I can here. So I'll show the bare minimum just for kind of putting one of these together. So, okay. So I think just to start, I'll do a cereal box, just because the geometry is really, really simple. So I hit tab to go into edit mode. Start with a cube. Cube is a great starting point for a cereal box. So down here I select face select mode. Then I'll shift click to select both of these. Down here I use the scale tool just to kind of make this a bit more of the depth that a cereal box actually is. And then I'll just do the same on the top and bottom to give it that height so it's more of a rectangle. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, so let's say this is our geometry then. So first step is create the geometry, and the second step is the texture. So what I normally do, I don't have a browser open now. I'll literally just Google or search for an image of what I want. So none of these really jump out. I already found one earlier, so I'll just show you what that one looks like. This one. So this one's nice, obviously, because it's not just the front, but you also have the sides and the top and bottom as well. I guess you don't have the back, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'll just use this as the texture. All right. So in Blender, you have to first set up a material. There's a default one, so we'll just use that. So I'm just using this little icon here as the material editor. And what I do is I don't use lighting for these. So I'm going to, in this shading section, I'm going to toggle shadeless so that it emits its own light. You don't have to worry about shadows and whatever and so on. Okay. Yeah, that's all we need here. Now I'm going to click over here to the texture editor. And one thing that's very important is in this coordinate section, instead of using generated, you want to switch to UV. So UV mapping lets us take this geometry, the faces of this, and map it to an image in a way that we specify. So it gives us control to say like this face maps to this part of the image and so on. That'll become clear in a second. So that's that for now. We have to load in the image first. So in this upper right hand corner here, there's this little kind of textured area. I'll just pull that to the left to get a new pane. Just make a little bit more room on the sides here. And then down here in this menu, I'll set this pane to be the UV image editor. Okay, and then I'll go to open, and I will find this image wherever it is. Yeah, okay. Texture is cereal. Open that up, cool, it shows up right here. So then what I'll do is back in this texture editor, you can go to type, select image or movie, and then here we can just click and use cereal, okay? So if we focus on this view here and hit Shift Z, it lets you kind of have this low-res real-time render, which is really, really helpful for UV mapping. So you can see the texture is there, it's just mapped on really weirdly because we haven't actually done any of that mapping ourselves. So I'm going to hit Shift Z again to go back to this. It's a bit smoother and a bit nicer. And then with the object selected, I'll hit Tab to go back into edit mode. Hit U. This is our UV mapping menu. So you can do either Smart UV Project or Unwrap. Smart UV Project, I don't know exactly how it does this, but it tries to flatten the object in a smart way, I guess. Sometimes that works well. Unwrap is a bit dumber. Sometimes it's more predictable as a result, and it's a little bit easier to work with. So I'm going to do just the regular Unwrap for now. So here we see our faces and vertices from this object mapped onto the texture here. And we can edit this to map on how we like. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to actually just select individual faces. Whoops, I have to turn this back on here. To select individual faces. Oh, maybe not. There should be a way. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, that was on by default. I guess not. I clicked here to keep UV and edit mode mesh selection in sync. So when I select something here, it's also selected here. Although this doesn't seem to quite be working how it should be. Let me just try, maybe the Smart UV Project automatically does this. Huh, strange. Okay, so maybe you need to do Smart UV Project. It's been a while since I've done this. But anyways, now you can see that when I select a face here, corresponding one is selected here, which is really, really handy. So I'm going to hit Shift Z again to go back into this kind of preview mode. With this face selected here, I can hit G, and that'll let me drag it around. You can see it's kind of updating on the left here. So I will pop this in this corner, although actually maybe that's not the best placement. So then what we can do is we can hit S to scale it. And what I'm doing here is just trying to get the geometry of the face here to kind of roughly map onto what I want it to. It might look warped. I might need to actually change the geometry of the object itself. Because here, see, it's not as elongated as it should be. So actually, why don't I change that now? Just do it the way we did in the beginning. I'll just stretch this out slightly. I guess that is better, I don't know. Shift Z again. Okay, so S scales, but I want to lock in certain axes, like I don't want to scale in both directions. So I can hit S and then X, for instance, to scale just in the X direction. So see, that looks a little better. And then I'll do S and Y to scale only in the Y direction. But you know what, the bottom is there. So, okay, that's pretty good, yeah. So, I mean, this method is meant to be really quick and dirty as well. I'm not really looking for precision here. So that's the front of the box. What I'll do here is I'll just do the same thing for the back of the box. Okay, that's fine. All right, so back of the box, front of the box, look kind of the same. That's fine. We'll do the top now. I'll select the top, you'll see it's here. Okay, so this is not oriented correctly. Let me go back into the preview mode here. So you can hit R, and that lets you do a rotation. So let's see, yeah, okay. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then I'll just do the whole scaling thing, same as we did before. Just get it. Now I don't want these little like cutout edges here, so I'm just gonna scale it to be smaller than that. Oh, it's too wide up here. I guess these boxes are quite narrow. That's fine. So I'm just gonna make this a bit narrower. Yeah, okay, that's fine. You even have it cut in a little, there's no problem with that. Okay, so that's the top. The bottom is going to be a lot easier because it's just a solid color. So let's pick that. We have to do the rotation again. And I'm just going to, yeah, that's fine. It's all solid blue anyways. And then we just repeat the same with the sides. So just scale, do a Y scale. Okay, and select this side, do it here. Oh, so this one is upside down, so I just need to do a 180 rotation. Scale this accordingly. There we go. All right, so that's the model, that's the texture. Super easy. I'll save this. Okay, so that's the modeling part. Now we want to get this into a browser. So the format, so I use Three.js for all the 3D browser stuff. And the format that I've found best, I think you used to be able to export it as a JSON and import it as a JSON. I think that's now deprecated. The standard is now the GLTF format. So I think when I was doing more of this modeling, I had to install a plugin in Blender to let me export GLTF. I think I saw something about it now being included by default. So you should double check that. It's not difficult to set up if you do have to install it as a plugin. But what we'll do here is I'm going to now hit Shift-Z to exit out of that preview mode, hit Tab to go back into object mode, excuse me, and keep this object selected. And then I will go to File, Export, GLTF 2.0, and then there's just a couple things that we want to change here. So just export the selected objects, Y up, that's great. Format here, I'm just going to use GLTF. You can leave everything else. I usually uncheck the animation stuff. It doesn't, if you don't have any animations, it doesn't actually affect the size of the export, but it's just, you know, might as well get rid of it if you're not using it. Okay, so I'm going to export it into this models folder here called serial, export. Okay, now we have serial.gltf. So that includes the vertice information. It also bundles in the texture and a UV map. Okay, so now I'll show you how to import it and just kind of get things up and running. So like Blender, Three.js is a pretty massive library. I won't go over everything in detail. I'll try to just show the minimum you need to get this up and running. We'll use Webpack and all that stuff to get things going. So, Okay, so I have a package.json. I'm going to paste everything in except for the actual code that we need to, the JavaScript code for when we get running. I'll make these files all available in a gist or something. So pretty simple. We just basically have three JS, package.json. Actually, all right, let's install that as well. And then I have the Webpack here. Pretty minimal one as well. So here it's going to look for a source main file, source/main. So I will make source and create the main file. And then what else? We need index page, HTML page, okay. Then a really simple style sheet. So we kind of have a full screen view of the 3D stage, the canvas rather. Okay, cool, that's all good. Now, there is some setup you have to do with Three.js, like setting up the scene and whatnot. I will, again, just paste that in. I'll quickly go over it so you kind of have a sense of what's in there. So I'll create this file scene.js in the source folder. And this is kind of boilerplate I use when I do Three.js stuff, so it just sets up a lot of standard stuff. So I can pass in some options if I want the camera to be orthographic or perspective camera. Set up the Three.js scene, set up the render, set alpha to true for transparency. I really like setting anti-alias to false. It gives it this kind of, I don't know, more textured look. You obviously don't have to do that. Set the pixel ratio so it adjusts for high density screens. Set the render size, canvas size, clear color, blah, blah, blah. One thing that I have found important is that I set the gamma factor. I set these gamma parameters of the render so that all the objects essentially emit their own light. It's really similar to the shadeless option that we used in Blender. You can do this on a material basis, I believe. You can set like the RGB intensity to 1 or something like that, and I think it's effectively shadeless then. You can do that, it's a little bit more work. This is easy. If all your objects are going to need it, you can just do it for the whole thing. Sometimes include lights. I haven't commented out here because, again, we're basically going the shadeless route, so we don't need environmental lighting. And then stuff to set up the camera, event listener, so that when it resizes it appropriately adjusts the canvas, the camera. And then just some hooks into the Three.js scene so you can add meshes and so on. Clear the scene and then render. Okay. Oh, that's it. Cool. So the other file that you need to include is Three.js does not include, maybe this has changed by now, but it does not include a loader for the GLTF format by default. There is just like one of those, there's like a file floating around that has this loader in it. So I will also include that in the gist, and here I will just copy and paste it. So what is it? gltf.js. Okay. Cool. So here in the main file, we'll bring all this stuff together. So we'll import the scene class, we'll import the gltf loader, and we'll import 3 as well. Create the loader. Give ourselves a comment. Okay, so create the main, or get the main element, and we'll attach the scene to that. Okay, so that'll set up the scene element, or the scene canvas and so on, add it to the main element, and then we're going to load the model. So there are a lot of ways you can do this. I'm just going to do this kind of quick and dirty way just for demonstration purposes. So we have a declare model variable so that we can reference it later for rotating it, and a function just to load the model. Okay, so we use the GLTF loader from here, specify the callback. So this loads in the whole scene, or like it loads it in as a scene. I only have one object in it, so I'm just going to grab that as the only one that I actually want to use. Something else that you kind of have to deal with is just adjusting the scale. So I'm going to scale it up. I was not really paying attention to the scale, so I'm just going to adjust for that here. And then I'll do some rotation stuff so that it kind of matches the example I showed you at the beginning. Okay, we'll add the model to the scene. Oh, and then I have this so that I can specify a callback either. So we'll basically, this callback will be the render function, and we'll just render after the model loads. Okay, so basic render would just be this. So every frame we call render and the scene updates. Since we also just want the model to rotate, we'll do this here. Okay. Okay. And then we'll call our load model function. So where was this file? This is in models, serial.gltf, and then we'll pass in render as the callback. So that should be all we need. I'll run the Webpack development server so you can have a look. Host 8080. And voila. Okay. So that's the basic idea. I will do one more example, something a little bit more complex, but not much. So let's make a new Blender. Okay. New Blender scene. I'm not going to work with a cube. I think right now I'm going to do a fruit bowl, because that's a bit more interesting. Just do like a really simple one like this, or maybe something like this. Kind of need to see more of the bowl though. Could do a wooden bowl. Maybe we'll try that. I can show also, actually what I'll do here is I'll show how to mix and match. Because you don't necessarily have to work off of a single image. You can combine them. None of these are just like... Yeah, I think the hardest part of this process is just finding a decent image. Okay, we'll just use this one. We'll try combining these two. That'll be an interesting challenge. Okay, so first we'll do the model before we start worrying about the textures. So I have a cube. A cube's not a really great starting point for this, so I'll hit X and then click on the delete menu item. I will go into down here, add mesh. What should we start with? I guess a sphere, UV sphere makes the most sense. We'll do like a semi-sphere. So this starts, let's see, we can bring this down to like 12 maybe. How's that? That's still a little high. Yeah, that looks kind of nice. So we'll bring the rings down as well. Yeah, maybe segments should be. Oh, that looks fine. Okay. So we have our sphere. I'm going to hit Tab to go to edit mode. We're going to just basically chop off the top. Oh, there's a way to do a lasso, but I'm completely forgetting how to do it right now. Oh, it's like this. So you hit Control and then drag your mouse. You can select a bunch of these at once. Okay, so select all these vertices. I'll hit X to delete the vertices. Now that leaves us with the bowl shape. And let's just get this ring. There's another shortcut to do this. I'm totally blanking on all of them now. Select the ring at the top and hit F. That'll fill in that face. And then we don't want this bowl to just be like flat on top, right? We want it to look like there's fruit in it. So one thing you can do is hit E. That's the extrude function, but we're going to hit E and then immediately hit S. So it lets us bring this in so we have like a little rim to the bowl. And then we're going to do it one more time. And then we'll raise this up. So it kind of looks like there is something in there. We can do it a couple more times actually, just to make it look a little bit more round. Maybe once more. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Now one thing we want to do is, our edits to the object have now made it so that its origin is kind of weirdly positioned relative to the object. We can change that here. I'm back in object mode, so I just hit Tab and then go to Set Origin and do Origin to Center of Mass Volume. That'll move it more towards somewhere more reasonable. And then we want to recenter the object as well. So up here, I'll go to this object editor, and here you can directly edit the location coordinates. So I'll just reset the Z to 0 so it recenters the object. That just makes it a little bit easier when you're importing the object into Three.js, so you have a better sense of like how to center it and so on, where its position is. Okay, so next we are going to go into the material. Oh, there's no material on this one because I created a new object, so I'll hit New. Just go down, pop the shadeless, do that. And then move this back over, pull this out, go to UV image editor, and then now we have to actually get the textures ready. So let's open this image, this image. Maybe not. Great. And great. Oh, come on. Okay, there's the JPEG. All right. Save these textures. So let's do bowl top and bowl side. And then what you want to do is edit these into a single image, into a single texture. So you can do this with whatever editing software you like. Doesn't really matter. Great. Okay, so let's save this. Just call this one bowl. And then we'll load it into here. Why doesn't it remember? Whoa. All right, so pop back over here, hit tab to go back to edit mode. I guess we'll try Smart Unwrap, we'll see. Oh God, oh boy. But first let's add this to our texture, UV, grades type, image, and we'll select bowl. So this should now have a texture on it. Looks kind of cool that way. But let's get this out of the way. Is this on? Yeah. And now, oh, see, it's like now, didn't really unwrap it in a very helpful way. Let's just do the regular old unwrap. Oh, I won't do it. I don't really understand how that works. But maybe the top one is the easiest to do right now. Let's do this back in the preview mode. Oh, it looks so weird. Alright, there's our beautiful fruit in the middle. Let's do the rim, so kind of see it from the top-down view. So we don't have a shot that really shows the rim, and we have this glass rim, right, but we want to do this wood one. Sometimes you can just get away with doing it like this. Obviously it's like a little low res, but I think it looks kind of nice. And then you want to do the sides. So the sides are going to be a little annoying because we want these to be contiguous, but they aren't in the way the textures unwrap. So sometimes you can just do that, just select the part you want and re-unwrap it, and it'll kind of make it a little more consistent. The question here is, can we get a whole half to do that? Will that work? Maybe. Oh, okay, that looks promising. It looks like Jupiter. Okay, let's do both sides and then we can see how we feel about it. Okay, that goes back into what we already selected. All right. Cool. So the problem here is there's this very clear seam. problem. If we unwrap the whole thing, what happens? Oh man, I didn't need to use this. Overuse this. A darker one maybe. It looks kind of nice, but to get it consistent with the rim color, you just do that. Yeah, looks quite nice actually. Okay, so there's our bowl of fruit. I will save it. Fruit. Oh no. And then we'll do the export again. So back into object mode, file, with the object selected, file, LTF, selected objects only, fruit, save it there. Now instead of cereal, we'll load fruit. And let's see. All right, there you have it. I mean, this color is a little desaturated. It might be nice to bump up the saturation, but this is the general flow. And it gets more complicated, you know, if you want to do more complex shapes, but this is by and large how you do it.